Hello everyone, I'm Jason Davis and I'm here at the Electoral Office for a special interview with the Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Elvin Bailey. Now he's going to be giving us some information regarding the electoral process, registration, and he'll be responding to certain statements that have been made in the public arena recently. Good day, Mr. Bailey, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Jason.
Okay, great. Now, for persons who might not understand, or this might be their first time, going through the voting process, can you take us through the steps of registering as a voter?
Well, before I do that, I want to give some appreciations. Well, to you, of course, that I said for allowing me the opportunity to get the information out. But more importantly, I want to thank those persons who have met me on the street and offered me a kind word. Those persons who have prayed for me, those persons who have prayed over me, and those persons who have prayed with me. That gives me the strength and the inspiration to continue in this very challenging job at this time. Now, we know an election is in the air. And ever since we have a process called continuous registration, where people can come in at any time during the year, once the office is open from 8 to 4 to register their interest to vote. When they present themselves, they have to bring some form of ID down to and including a passport and or a birth certificate. Well, the birth certificate is the most basic thing that they can bring to register. They ask a series of questions. That information is captured in our database. They have to fill out the form, of course. And then that information is captured in the database. It goes onto our system. It is published in different places in the constituencies for people to have a look at who has registered. Each person who has registered would leave the office with 2 bits of paper. One is a certificate of registration, and that is the critical one, the certificate of registration. And the other is the information that they have given us, which is captured. This is the certificate of registration book. It comes in batches of 50. Each person is given one. You cannot get onto the register at all unless you have a certificate of registration. So this document here is critically important, and we will share a little close-up of it with the people of the Federation. Now, I want to share with you information in terms of our registration. And I have provided information in the form of what is the normal numbers that we see on a regular basis, and the numbers that we have seen in the last quarter, because I do a quarterly report for the commission that guides my work. So I have the information in terms of last year, this corresponding period, well, second quarter. I have the information about the first quarter this year, and I have information about the second quarter this year. Now, in 2021, in the period April, May, and June, we had 225 registrations over the entire Federation. 225. In the corresponding period this year, that's April, May, and June of 2022, and recall, the House was dissolved on the 10th of May, but the lead-up was in April. We had 1,634 persons registering St. Kitts and Nevis. And I will share this information in the form of a slide so the public can see what we're talking about. Now, the period before January, February, and March, and we began to see this spike in March, there were 425 persons registered. The point I want to make is that in April, May, and June of this year, registration increased manifold. 1,634 persons registered. That's just registration. Now, there are persons who are already on the register whose situation has changed and they want to correct that situation. They have moved from here to there. Their occupation has changed, and some people are very particular about this thing. I am no longer a student. I am such and such. So they want their registration to be adjusted. Their names have changed. They have gotten married, they have gotten divorced, they have done deed polls, what have you. That requires a claim to be made. In that period, April to June 2022, we had in St. Kitts alone 443 claims. April to June 2021, the corresponding period last year, there were 40.
Wait, so basically what you're telling me is that the difference between last year and this year is there's a 10 times difference?
If your maths is correct. I think it's more like 100.
40 to 400? That's
40 to 443. Anyhow, but in January to March, again, when people's interest was peaked, there were 80, just in St. Kitts. I can tell you that the April to June figure for the entire federation was 555.
And these are claims, people changing
These
their
are
own
claims, people changing
their own information.
That is correct, voluntarily. Okay. Each one of these is subject to objections. On top of that, and I must apologize, I don't have that figure, but I could supply it later. There are objections to registrations. So you come in to register and you say your name is whatever, and your occupation is whatever, and more importantly, that you live in a certain place. When that list goes out to those places, anybody who's on that register and properly registered can say, no, 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 no. This guy doesn't live here. That sparks what is called a hearing, and a decision is made. Until and unless that decision is made, you cannot be, as the legislation describes it, properly registered. You are enrolled, but you are not activated. You cannot vote. And that point is a critical point. So we've had 1,634 registrations that have to be vetted. We have had 443 claims in St. Kitts, 555 St. Kitts and Nevis that have to be vetted. And we have over 300 objections that have to be vetted. Now, all of these are contact points between the general public and the office. Okay. Mr. Vaughan, if I may go into that aspect now, was appointed, recommended. We were told he's coming here as of the 1st of June to look at our records. He has had, since the 1st of June, he has had unfettered access to all of the information from December of last year to July of this year. We have given him all of these books. Once they're finished, we have given him all of the claims. Once we have done what we have to do internally, we have given him all of the objections. He has all of that information. The only thing we have said to him is that these books, once they are current, and I go back, I said they are in books of 50, this certificate, I have to protect that certificate because I don't want anybody tampering with it, destroying it, removing it from the book when we are not looking, because we don't mind in terms of looking over the shoulder of the scrutiny. He's doing what he's doing, we're doing what we're doing. With 1,634 people registering, we were extremely busy. We couldn't watch him and so on. So all we are saying to him in terms of this is the information. We want to control access to this book. access to the certificate of registration so that nobody could tamper with it, then he can have it to do his work. That apparently is the source of contention.
And just to be specific, you were referring to a book that's not completed. It might be half used.
That is correct.
Okay, but it could not be taken out of your possession while it's still in use.
No, he doesn't. We don't want it in the hands of non-staff who may be tempted. Because understand, Mr. Vaughan is an agent of a political party. He's not staff. The other political parties, the other people who intended to contest elections, also have a right to this information. So we're saying, let us finish our books and we will share the used books with you, which, and this is the key, they are tamper-proof because no more certificates are in them. But those that have certificates in them are subject to. And my job as supervisor of elections, in part, is to protect the integrity of the office, including the information and the certificates and so on that we have.
What kind of tampering are we talking about? Can you give some examples?
Well, we've never had any tamperings, but these are removable. They could be taken out. If they are taken out, we will have to make sure that number 2 is where it should be, and that we haven't gone to number 3, and so on and so on and so on. So we're saying, give us an opportunity to, when the book is finished, just like you looked at December's, which was finished, the numbers in December, the books in December, just look like you looked at the books in January, February, March, April, May, and June, and those that are finished in July.
I remember in Mr. Vaughan's statement to the media, one of his claims was that basically he was being given the runaround, that that the staff was being instructed to tell him that they're not there, or to give him some sort of to stonewall him, as it were. What's your response to that?
I don't know what he's talking about. He himself has admitted he has had the cooperation of the staff. The sticking point is that he wants the book that we're writing in. We must pause and give him the book. And I'm saying we should not disrupt the flow of our office work to facilitate him. When we are done with the book, we'll get it to him. I don't know of any stonewalling that was done. I have been there, he has approached me, and I have consistently said to him, yes, sir, when you will get it. He is quoting the legislation and giving his interpretation of the legislation. And interestingly, the legislation does say, as a scrutineer, he should have access. It doesn't say when.
Okay, so that factor, when he gets access, would be up to the electoral office?
Yes.
Okay. He also made the claim that the reluctance to give him access infers that there is something to hide.
Let me pose the question, the answer. Let me answer this with a question. We have been registering forever. He has come in June. Let's go back to the period when he requested. December, January, February, March, April, and May. We were registering and doing it correctly when there was nobody watching. Why would we now try to do something untoward when somebody is watching? It makes no sense. We have registered over 2,000 persons, if you count the 1643 plus the 225 plus December and so on and so on. We have registered over 2,000 persons in that period. He has looked at all 2,000 registrations. He, as he admitted to me, has found no there. When he was asked on the media, have you found any irregularities? He deferred, he demurred. He didn't answer the question. I am not certain. I don't know what he expects to have changed in July that didn't happen in December, January, February, March, April, and May, and June. The point is, we're doing this thing according to the book. We're very particular. Well, I grew up in Nevis. My grandmother used the word particular. We're very particular about what we do and how we do it, because we know voting is a fundamental right, and people get very, very, very ticklish about their rights, their registration and their voting rights. And I am one of those people, because I am too a voter. So you should be too, because you're a voter. So I am at a loss to understand the angst that Mr. Vaughan is bringing.
From what I understand, when we asked, the root behind his query or his claims, his statement was that he had been given access before, but all of a sudden, quote unquote, he has been denied access.
I don't know what to say to that. Because in his own letters, he said there has been no hindrance. All we have said to him, you will have the book, but while there are active sheets in it, registrations, certificates in it, I am not supposed to trust anybody outside of this office that they will do the right thing. I have, by my very nature, I must by my very nature be suspicious of anybody who wants to take a book that is active, because, as I said, they are agents of political parties.
So is the certificate book the only, for lack of a better term, document of contention?
I think you'll have to ask Larry Vaughan that.
Okay.
But he has had access to everything. And he wants to get the book, the receipt book, while it is current, while it is in use, on the day of use. And he isn't even willing to come back and say, okay, let me come at the close of day. As other scrutineers have done. They have come and they've said, I see you're busy. I need this information. Let me come back at the close of day. And the staff has facilitated.
But in a case like this, with the book being active, even if he came back at the close of day, would he be granted access then?
The others were granted.
Okay, even if the book is...
because we won't have clients in the office at the time. We could give undivided attention.
Okay, so he could have access to a book that's in use as long as he's being monitored for security purposes.
Let me put it this way. Larry Vaughan wants what Larry Vaughan wants when he wants it.
Okay, that's an interesting way of putting it. But just to answer the question, so he could have access to the book if it's still in use as long as he's being monitored?
After hours, yes.
Okay, so yes, in that situation. All right. Now, I know that as a scrutineer, you said he's been given access to these things. Is a scrutineer the only person outside this office that would have access to the certificate book?
Yes, according to law.
Okay, so a person from the public can't just walk in and ask to see the book from a certain period?
No.
Okay.
You have to be sent by a political party.
Okay.
Or candidate. According to law.
Okay. For the average person, can you just briefly explain the objection process?
Well, as I said, we publish the list of people who have registered each month. Mm-hmm. That list, by law, is put into conspicuous places in each polling division. The public has an opportunity and a right to go and scrutinize that list, look at it, see who the people are, their names, their occupation, and their address. Anybody who is registered, properly registered in the constituency, in the polling division, can object. and say, I do not know this person to be living here. And that triggers a series of events. One, a notice to be sent to the person that says someone has objected to you. Two, a hearing, which is done by the registration officers to determine whether the objection has merit or not. And then the decision is made, and then that person's name should come out on the revised monthly list. And I said should, because if the hearings are incomplete, we have to publish the revised monthly list without those names that were objected to. But they can then come out on what is called a supplemental list.
What kind of a time period are we looking at? How long does it take for a hearing to be held and to be resolved?
Well, there is no time frame given in the legislation. There is a time sensitivity to the notice being sent to the person. They must have a certain period in which to prepare themselves. So that happens. You have 5 days between the notice and the hearing. 5 working days, 5 clear days between the notice and the hearing. But because there's a series of hearings, all of them have to be completed before the decision is made.
Okay, so now the actual objection that a person might say, they're looking at the list and they realize, hey, this person doesn't belong here. Do they just go in and to the electoral office and say, is there something, a formal procedure?
There is this form, notice of objection, which is completed by the person. It says, to the registration officer for the constituency of whatever it is, take notice that I, the name of the objector, whose occupation is this, whose address is that, they are qualified to be included in monthlies, and I object to the inclusion therein of this person with the details and the reason why they do not live there. They have never lived there. Whatever the reason they want to give, whatever the reason they give has to be investigated.
Okay, so this document is the start of that whole formal proceeding.
Yes.
And this is all triggered by someone looking at these lists that are put in public places. My question, with the advancement of technology and the entire country moving into the more digital age, is there a possibility that this list of voters, instead of being nailed or stapled or put up in a public place, can be posted online, that persons can go online instead of to that physical location?
How does the 89-year-old man over in Phillips's village access the online information? If you're asking if it could also, then yes. But if you're asking if this old, tested and tried, with all its flaws, system is to be replaced, that is not something that I can answer. This much I will tell you. There's a role for what you have suggested, and there's a role for this old traditional system.
Okay, but as it stands right now, there's no digital attachment or digital version of this as well.
As it stands now, the law does not require digitization. However, quite a lot of the information is online.
Okay, and where can persons go to get this information?
It's on www.legal.gov.kn.
Okay.
Want me to repeat?
Yes, please.
www.legal.gov.kn.
And what kind of information can people find on this website?
I don't know. That asks me to recall. But go on, navigate, go to the electoral page. The monthly lists are there. The annual lists are there. The monthly revised lists are there. The persons who have passed to the great beyond recently, they are, that we've removed from the register, they are there. The information about the 2020 election results is there. What else is there? General information about the office. The legislation is there. So there's quite a lot of information on that website.
Speaking of persons who've passed away, what kind of I don't know how to put this, but a cleanup process is done to ensure that deceased persons are no longer on the list?
We get the list of persons who are deceased from the Register of Births, Deaths and Marriages, and we proceed to remove them from the register. If a relative brings in a death certificate of a loved one, we remove that person from the register. We have had over in Nevis the information about human remains that were imported, and we have removed those names. Our information, however, is based on evidence from the competent authority or with the documentation presented. A funeral program is not an acceptable form of evidence. Persons who have died overseas, who are on the register, whose bodies have not returned here for cremation or burial, interment, and so on, we can't remove them from the register. We have no evidence. And I always recall the famous situation in Nevis, where a woman who was said to have died turned up in court to give evidence in an election matter. We have to be extremely careful.
I see. Okay, we're almost out of time. Is there any more information that you'd like the public to know before we wrap up?
I want to encourage the public to continue to pay attention to the register. It is critical that they know that they are registered and where they are registered. In due course, we will publish the places where we will ask them to go and cast their vote. I would want them, when they go to cast their vote, to pay special attention to the instructions of the presiding officer. Make your mark in the space provided. Do not let it go over. Make your vote count for the person of your choice.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir.
I've been speaking with Mr. Elvin Bailey, the Supervisor of Elections here at the Electoral Office. He's been giving us information about registration, objections, claims, and, of course, responding to certain statements made in the public arena. I'm Jason Davis for ZIZ TV.